Welcome everybody. This is the Perspectives podcast with your host, Holden Stephan Roy. Holden, say hi.
Hi, Holden. It's all right.
And
I know my part.
and you do know your part. And myself, Littyyy Bro Flacko. And today we have our guest. You know what? I'm gonna start with like a question off rip before I even get to like the intro shit.
It's a good question.
How do I introduce?
Baxter Words.
Like,
so it's not Wordsworth.
Because, like we discovered, like,
it used to be
because the Keela song comes out and then we got really confused.
No, you know what? I forgot to tell Hilla that it was just Baxter Words. I forgot to emphasize that, and she put like so much effort into putting that shit out. I didn't have the heart to go back and be like, "Yo, can you switch it to Baxter Words?" I was just like, you know what? I'm gonna let that shit rock.
So we were super confused.
It's Baxter Words.
That's
at the hold on. Is it words with an S or a Z or Z? Z as you Americans people put it, you know.
Z is because it's hip hop, but no, it's words with an S.
All right, that's fair. I respect that.
Word.
Right.
That's a good start.
With our guest, Baxter Words.
And I guess I've never declared that a new place, so you guys got the first declaration for that.
It's also maybe because sometimes you gotta do the due diligence and you encounter 3 spellings because the Instagram throws the Z into the equation and you're like, as a person trying to actually figure out what the correct name is.
I might have put the Z on Instagram. Let me double check that.
Nah, that one's 100.
You might have been in your
I might have could have
hip-hop head bag.
I did. I absolutely did.
You know what I mean?
So I'm like, what's
like, yo.
Anyway,
you know what time it is.
You know sometimes you gotta confuse people.
I definitely I think I'm not sure how much Jess went by the Z before we met, but I tell you this: once we met, I wasn't ever addressing him with none of that S at the end of the James. It was all Z. I'm like,
it has to be for him because like that's how you can Google him, right?
You know what I'm saying? That's why I always stress him. Googleableness.
Right. Yeah, man.
Okay,
so yeah,
folks,
let's
ladies
run
and
into
gentlemen,
it.
let's do that. Let's run the intro, right? So, so the way that this show came about, Bax, I know that you know the origin story, but for show purposes, right? Like, we got to do it, right? One time, me and Holden, right? Like we met because I was putting out music, doing Littyyy Bros Volume 1, right? And the engineer was an engineer from Montreal, Canada, and he might as well be like a New York hip hop head, right? Because he's very like, oh, I'm not gonna share like anybody that I work with musically because a lot of people that I work with musically might be trash, and I don't want to be like associating with this shit. But facts. He shared our shit, which made Holden, who notices how little he does share anybody else's music, kind of perk up and be like, what's this that you're sharing? Like, what? Wait, what? And so he checked it out, right? Kind of dug the shit that we was doing and did like a little review. Such a New York nigga. Oh, immediately like tried to belittle it, like a little review. Why do we use the word little? The word little is so belittling. New Yorkers are the worst, Anyway, so we did a review. We were like, yo, this is lit. I was like, yo, we should do an interview. We did an interview. I felt like I went to fucking therapy after I did an interview, bro. I was like, yo, why are you asking me questions that I've never been asked all these years in hip hop? It's always like fucking, when did you fall in love with hip hop?
I'll confirm that the interviews that I've seen Holden do, he definitely hits it at an angle that like other people don't really come at. I don't know if it's the Montreal thing.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's as much the Montreal stuff as more I don't know. I figured out that like it's just like okay to not know things, and that was like a lot of it, right?
It's okay to not know things,
right? And
that's real. That's super real.
So like to me, it's an opportunity to like ask questions I care about. I'll be real with you, bro. I have never personally heard a person talk about their songs or their albums for more than 5 minutes and keep it litty. So the life stuff is litty. The people care about like that stuff, like, but that's what you care about. That's what we all care about. So it's like the music part. Let the rest of the internet cover that. You know what I mean?
Okay, I respect it. That's a different. I like the perspectives.
I love the. I'm not gonna lie. Since we changed the name, like I'm so into like. Anytime I say the word perspectives, I almost want to hit like the. I want to hit the imaginary. Like I'm Jim Carrey in the Truman Show. Like look dramatically at the camera.
Yo, it's an amazing because that's what it is though. I'm like, I guess because I don't know all the New York shit, it has a charm when talking to New Yorkers. But yeah, it's just also like I'm curious about other things. Like I don't know, nobody ever talks about the 5-year-old shit, and then you hear about the 5-year-old shit, and it's like, oh, say word. We all gotta know.
That's the shit that I'm the most interested in. I think.
That though,
so let's get to it. Right.
Exactly.
So
first question that you asked.
I went through. I went through all that to say, right, like the first question that I interrupt Holden's question for is, why don't you introduce yourself to people and tell us where you are from and where your parents are from?
Oh, interesting. It's interesting already. My name is Baxter Words. I am an MC from New York City. I'm from all over New York City. I was born in Harlem off of 116th Street, but my earliest memories are from 151st Street in Amsterdam. I was raised in St. Albans / Cambria Heights, Queens.
Pause there. We're going to go through that. We good.
Okay.
But now we got to go to where your parents be from.
Okay, my mother is from here, black. She's half Jamaican, so makes me a quarter Jamaican. My father is 100% Puerto Rican, from Harlem somewhere. He passed away when I was young, so I didn't really get to know him or that side of my family. But my grandfather was the first president of the National Puerto Rican Day Parade. So,
hey, that's lit off rip. Puerto Rican Day Parade, Holden, just so that you know, right? Like we do a lot of, as much as we're interviewing you backs, we are also educating Holden, right?
Facts.
Like,
facts.
From Montreal.
Not just Holden, but everybody.
Like, and everybody, right, exactly. And right, like the Puerto Rican Day Parade in New York City, Holden, is fucking huge.
Yeah.
And it's like probably like as you know how like the Irish
St.
people
Patrick's?
kind of like St. Patrick's Day is like a big thing, kind of like almost everywhere in the world, and like they're like big about their parade. In New York City, their parade is also big, but like the Puerto Rican Day Parade might actually like outdo the.
Yeah, you know what's
St.
crazy
Patty's
about
Day
the Puerto
parade
Rican
with the
parade
numbers of people.
is they have Puerto Rican Day parades in the boroughs by themselves.
Yes.
And then they have the big national Puerto Rican Day parades. So like that's how proud Puerto Ricans are of being Puerto Rican. It's like we're gonna have a parade and then have another one just parade. Because the extra pride.
That's how I feel about Dominicans because they have Dominican women have like a Dominican's Mother's Day date that's different than the American Mother's Day date. And they celebrate
them both. Yeah,
like, why would you not though? Like for real though, why would you not? But yeah,
game the system.
It's like It's like if one of your parents is Jewish and the other one's fucking not. It's like let's do Christmas and Hanukkah. Why not?
Yo, it's kind of how it works out though. I mean, I went through a little bit of that. So yo, with that, we got the main real question, and all that was a little bit of contest to make it land harder. There's a little bit of a story, and you may have heard the story, but still, as we run it, it all starts with my girlfriend, and she's washing the dishes one time, and she's playing that Black Eyed Peas song on her phone. The I got a feeling, ooh, she's vibing, she's dancing, she's doing her thing, and I look at her, and I had this moment of realization. Like, when the fuck did this song become chores music? And I say that because if you take this same very song and you run it back like 10, 11 years, this is like the middle of the night club banger anthem, everybody dancing, having the best time of their life song. And then all this time passes and the song doesn't change at all because it's a song, but our lives evolve so much that the context and relationship with the song that we have, like, it changes so much that it goes from being party fun music to the music we put on when we're doing boring shit and want to go back to party fun times to make the boring stuff much better. Which got me thinking about music and time and relationships and how the little ones, man, when they be out there with the Pop Smokes and whatnot, and they don't even know that they're going to be just doing dishes to that one day. And they don't know that the second Flacko and them was playing Pop Smoke in the car, I started playing Pop Smoke when I do dishes, and that's just the natural cycle of being a growing up in this world. And it got me thinking about, again, just the musical journeys that we're all on. Because, yo, when you watch so many of these interviews, and so many of the people out there, everybody kind of starts it at this adolescent phase when people kind of form their identity and kind of like figure out like, okay, I'm like 12 now and I like this rapper and I'm going to be a rhymer or I'm going to do this. And as much as that's a super pivotal part of the story, it's absolutely not the beginning of anybody's musical journey, right? Like music is something that we kind of like have in our lives since time. Like when you came out in the hospital, there's a very good chance somebody was listening to a song when that happened. And from that moment on, he was actually hearing music. Like I can remember being like 5 years old in Montreal in the apartment. My dad's got all the gray boxes in the apartment, the amp, the preamp, the radio, the tape deck with the wires going to all the speakers and shit. And he'd be playing his Led Zeppelins and things like that off the tapes in the daytime. But at the nighttime, it's all this EDM club music straight from the clubs. But my mom, she was more like soft rock musicals and all of that kind of vibe. And all of this shit was swirling around before I had any control of any of the music that, you know, I could listen to. It was just what they were into. And so with that, I was hoping, Mr. Baxter Words, you could run us back to being the smallest, youngest Baxter Words, probably in the 116s or 50s or something of Harlem, whenever you can remember, and tell us a little bit about what it sounded like to be you before you had control over this.
You know, it's a funny question you ask, right? Well, it's not, the question itself isn't funny, but it makes me kind of think, obviously, as it's intended to do. I am surprised to say myself, I don't really remember the soundtrack to my days in Harlem. Like, I have vivid memories of a few things. One is spending time with my mother, but more than that, like movies. And if we're gonna go with soundtracks, I would say my mother, when me and my brother were very young, me and my brother are close in age. He's like maybe like 18 months older than me or something like that.
That's dope.
Yeah, we were super close too when we were young. But my mother would like have us watching a lot of movies, and Grease 2 are some of the first movies I can ever remember watching. I absolutely love those movies. And it's like, I wasn't until I was in high school where I realized that people don't fuck with Grease 2 the same way they fuck with Grease 1.
No, they do not.
we were talking, I was with some friends, we was talking about it. They was like, yo, Grease is great. I was like, oh, I love Grease. And I was like, yo, in Grease 2, they was like, there's a Grease 2? What the fuck are you talking about? I was like, yo, don't sleep on Grease 2. Michelle Pfeiffer's in that. Fucking, they on motorcycles. It's crazy. But, a lot of those songs, a lot of the songs from those movies, I think,
That's
and a lot
valid,
of cartoons.
Though. And cartoons is also mad valid. That shit comes up, believe it or not.
I've watched so many cartoons in my lifetime. It's a little ridiculous.
And like the theme songs is all music. Half these cartoons,
absolutely.
A lot of these cartoons is just like low key musicals, or at least
in the 80s. Motherfuckers went ham when it came to like the opening theme song to a cartoon. If you ever hear the Transformers fucking intro, they got like a string section. It's like Transformers. It's like, damn. Son.
The music back in the days was definitely like super. The one that I always think about is fucking
right,
Flash Gordon. Like that shit.
Got a whole fucking choir. Say one of us.
You know what I mean?
Oh shit! Yeah, okay, I know that.
That shit was essentially like
even Thundercats, G.I. Joe, all
Thundercats was
shit,
big,
you know?
though.
Like,
Thundercats is like that shit got sampled big,
huge.
Yo, because all of it is it's like music. It's like they had to hire actual bands and fucking artists to produce that stuff.
Yeah, I could see that as being a big influence. And yo, my mom's was huge on Grease. That she saw that shit over 100 times in theaters. That shit's a staple of my childhood, bro. Grease 2. She's one of the other crowd though. She hated that shit.
Grease
2 is not a
church performance of Grease.
Say word.
Church performance of Grease?
You know, like young youth group.
Oh, got you. Like, yeah.
Doing like a fucking
a rendition.
The whole play. The play? I guess.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
No, that's still cool. So if that's fair though, so your earliest memories are more you just being around the musicals and whatnot. But like, were you like up to anything when you were little, passion wise? Did you have any little hobbies, or were you more just like a consumer of life and just kind of doing your thing?
A little bit of both, right? So My time spent in Harlem was with like the first 4 years of my life. Like I was only like up to I started first grade when I was in Queens, but I was in like kindergarten and preschool at Harlem. But I have vivid memories of being in Harlem. One of them being in preschool, I had a music class where they would, they just let the kids play on like drums and like shake fucking tambourines and shit like that. But I absolutely loved it. I have a very traumatic memory of one time. Whoever was in charge, I'm not gonna call him a teacher because I don't know what the fuck you teaching in preschool, but they wouldn't let me go to music because I didn't color in an apple the right way. Like how you tell a kid that I was like coloring in an apple, and they said because I didn't. If you know how crayons sometimes they have like the little white spaces between the fucking because you didn't do it like, and they were like, nah, you got to fill all that in before you can't go to music class. And I fucking cried my
coloring book fucking Hitlers and shit. Like what?
So upset. But I was artistic. I always like drawn things, and I don't know whatever I could get into. My mother was super creative too. She would like tell us stories and use our little like action figures to tell the stories and shit like that.
Actually, that's really cool.
Yeah, but to throw a little trauma into this whole thing. So, but what happened is my mother. It was the '80s. I don't know if you know about the '80s a lot, but there was a lot going on. Yeah. Some of what was going on was narcotics. And my mother eventually ended up leaving me and my brother at my grandmother's house in Queens, which is how I ended up being in Queens. And then I spent most of my life, most of my childhood, out in Queens with my grandmother and not with my mother. And that was like sort of an interesting upbringing because I didn't like this is y'all gonna get some shit.
That's what we're here for.
I didn't get a replacement for a mom. You know what I'm saying? Like there was no. I technically look at myself as like not having a mother or a father because there was no like replacement. I had like aunts, uncles, and my grandmother, and they all did fantastic at their appointed positions. Like my grandmother was amazing. My aunts and uncles like were amazing, but nobody really like stepped up to be like a mom or whatever. So like for a good part of my childhood, I would say I was like super in my head in the clouds, like no sort of like active involvement in my own life. Just kind of like, all right, well, I'm existing and I guess I'll continue to do that. Like,
going from thing to thing.
Yeah, just doing what people told me to do. It's like, yo, go to school. It's like, all right, I guess so. Why not?
Go to school, yeah.
Right, with no sort of like thought about what I wanted to do or what what I'm saying, or just any interaction.
Yeah, that's big though. I mean, like this is the kind of shit where it's like, I guess when I hear stuff like that, it's mad different than a little bit where I come from. And sometimes it's really helpful to hear these kinds of stories because they add that like layer of context to realities that a lot of us don't get exposed to so that we can have a better perspective of things.
Perspectives. That's when you look at
facts. Most people don't have, not everybody has like a mom and dad, like like growing up in New York City, I know that like as a child of both my parents are around and still married and I'm in their household and all 5 of me and my siblings are all from the same mom and dad.
Wow.
I was in the rarity.
Yeah,
and,
man.
You know what I mean? Like most of my friends weren't like that, and like growing up in the projects, it was, looked at like
that's super rare even today.
Your dad, like your dad's
right.
You got a dad. Your dad.
And it's the same.
He drives. Like he drives. He has a car. Like what? I was the like rich friend.
Right. In the same project.
I'm not rich, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm not rich.
Like we living in the same building.
but because of that, because of having my dad and my mom, it was like.
But I guess you were rich in a way, right? Because like
I was rich in
a real way. Because
even beyond that, like arguably rich is hella relative, right? So I mean, what is like if we want to go down that path, like you can be rich in the same environment but not rich in the bigger world. So to the eyes of somebody,
I mean, maybe, but you know, in a very real perspective, I think children who have consistency and people who like install diligence and fucking discipline in them, like that's something that's way more valuable than like your parents having money. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely,
I would agree.
Because what I'll say is like for me, I have a huge imagination and like super creativity, and I think a lot of that comes from like spending a lot of time inside my own head when I was younger. But I will say I am not the most disciplined person, you know what I'm saying? And it has caused the issue in my life, and I it's nobody's fault. Well, that's a lie. It is people's fault, but you know, I own it. But like when I was younger, nobody really told me to do nothing. You know what I'm saying? There was nobody who was like, "Yo, you have to do this." It was kind of like, "You alive still? Good."
But it's also like it's an interesting point you make though about like about the structure, because like I said, richness is relative, right? Like to me, it's not in my head like wealth per se. I mean, because I've seen the opposite. I've seen people who come from like money, and they're in the exact same position that's coming from poverty in that regard, because there's no discipline. There was never a reason to care, and literally what you're describing in a sense, the vacant, like nobody cared, nobody interacted with me type shit, and that shit's real, and like it's everywhere. So it's just cool that you shared that, and that's like, I guess it's part of your existence, so it's a relevant part of the story. Don't
part
get
of his
me wrong.
DNA now,
but it's still like
the DNA of his life.
Bold to state it and put it out like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't. It's interesting. I don't really. I understand people think it is bold, but I just like. What happened is what happened. You know what I'm saying?
What happened is what happened. I feel the same way.
Yeah.
Like I'm not gonna fantasize anything in my life. You know what I mean? Like it is what it was. So like if there does end up being like a thing where like, what? It's like, I mean, that's just what happened. You know what I mean? Like it's not about like same as like the negatives are just like, this is just what happened.
Right. I'm not trying to spin some story to like have it be deeper than it is, but I'm also not trying to like pretend like it wasn't anything. But at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, that's my story. Like I can't go back and rewrite it. You know, I can only tell it.
Just gotta